So yes. Everybody. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's great to see everybody. We'd like to welcome Walter McClennen, who I can tell by everyone here you already know, but Walter has written a number of short stories, short histories, on a broad variety of topics pertaining to family, friends, community, and issues both social and political. His latest book, Looking East, is a collection of the best of those short stories selected from his writing of the past 20 years. In this presentation, Walter will share what he terms history adventures based on, among other things, the birth of a grandchild, the purchase of an antique house, and the discovery of a ribbon-tied packet of letters in a trunk. In Walter's words, each one is its own tale, but each is equally important as an example of good ways to approach saving history for future generations. So welcome. We're looking forward to it.
And Martin George, also Historical Society of Sherburne, who joined the library to invite me to speak tonight. And we know each other, most of us, yeah. And it's great to see you. I'm particularly pleased with people who come to see you second time. I can see it in your face that they know I'm in trouble. Oh, and a few more other folks coming in. It's great. Hi, Susie. Hi, Warren. So, come on in and join us. We're just getting started. Okay. So, I'm going to be speaking for about an hour, and I've got a slideshow to go through. I wanted to share with you that in a nutshell, what I'm going to do is talk about 3 books that I've written that are history books. 2 of them are letter books, that is bringing letters that have been found and then preserved, and then I brought forth into a book. So I preserved those letters, and I'm encouraging other people to see, if we have some letters here that we're about to throw out, do we really want to throw those letters out or not? And after hearing what I speak about tonight, I think you'll know, check carefully before you throw them out. The 3rd book that I've written is totally different. It's my writing for the last 20 years. They're mostly short histories. The topic will come up to me and I'll say, I think I'll write something for my son, my wife, my cousin, on this subject that came up, or for some friends in the neighborhood. So they're short histories, and they would go in folders in my file cabinet, and I tried to write them well, and I did a pretty good job of it, and they started to collect. And it became a point, particularly with COVID, when COVID came along, and you'll hear the story later on here, where I realized that with my own grandfather, I didn't know much about him because he died when I was 3 years old. We'll talk about him a little bit this evening. And although he was a fairly important person in Boston legal circles, he did not leave anything in writing except his case law. And case law isn't something we really want to read a lot about. I'm more interested in personal stuff. So I didn't know about my grandfather. And I thought, boy, I've got these files here, and 50 years from now, a grandchild is going to say, what grandpa did? What did he write, or anything like that? And somebody would come across these files and say, oh, and I decided to put them all together into a book now to make it easier 50 years from now. Somebody would know who Walter McClennen was. So it's about 3 books that I've written. It's also about 4 or 5 monographs, samples that are here, and you can look at these afterwards. I'll be telling you a little bit about these. These are not books, but they're ways to preserve the past. And that's my game, how do we preserve the past? Once it's lost, if it's not written down somehow, it is lost. And what we can do is do our best to preserve the past. So that's what in a nutshell, what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be fast and furious at times. It's going to be a little distracting because my current book weaves through my old writings, weaves through my current book in interesting ways. So if you feel like, well, this little bumpy ride here, it's okay. You'll enjoy it. And I think at the end, you'll get a sense of what I've tried to do. And I think, although as a history major in college, I do feel like I became good at history in retirement when I looked at things differently and I had a whole life behind me of the things that I've done in my life. And I could understand history better and also understand the difficulties of history. How do you really understand history? I think it's hard to understand. And that's my journey, trying to understand history. My kids are a little interested in that, my adult kids. And so I sort of try in an hour to scoot through this tonight, and the last 20 minutes or so, we'll have questions. You can ask questions along the way, it's informal, but we'll see where this goes. Let's see if I can get this thing working. So, adventures in history, saving what could be lost. Simple, that's what I'm trying to do tonight. Share with you, saving what could be lost. And, whoops, upside down. So, it worked before. Maybe I have to go. Oh, that's the. There we go. I don't know why this didn't pick up. Okay, an interesting thing. This is one of the first short histories I did, and you might want to take a look at this. And it is the first chapter in my book. Is a short history of the world for Taylor. Taylor is my granddaughter, born in the year 2000, and she is of her grandparents came here from Taiwan, in the 1960s or late 60s, and were graduate students here. And they had two daughters. One of the daughters married our oldest son, Seth. So Taylor was a grandchild of Taiwanese extraction and Euro-American extraction. And when she was in the third grade, it's a little premature, but she was a pretty smart girl, trying to share some stuff about history with her. And I wanted her to know about history, but with the picture of Taiwan being important and the United States and Europe being important coming together. And just her family, her mom, who was of Taiwanese extraction, born here, the daughter of immigrants, and our oldest son, who's Euro-American, whatever you want to say. I'm going to read this to you because these were introductory thoughts that I said to her in the third grade and then in the eighth grade when I illustrated this history, which is 15 pages long. And a short history of the world, 15 pages. Yeah, that sounds a little odd, but I did it. And so I have to tell you, it's not bad. Excuse me, that's not vanity. I just think it's not bad. It's hard to do. So this is to Taylor. I keep trying to understand history. We should know it and understand it so we can learn from the past. But what is it? A record of the past? Is it a small sliver of the past that someone wrote down? Or is it just another story that tries to capture the past so we have some idea of where we came from? So I tuned that up to my third grade granddaughter. She didn't understand. That's okay. I enjoyed writing to it, and I really wrote this for her so that through her middle school years and high school years and college years and adult years, she would read it and say, oh, Grandpa was telling me something, which clearly you guys are historians, so you understand that. It worked this time, Jen. Okay, so this is in big letters, and I've done it so I can go scooting right through. But in 2008, it was just a text document, and then we had a neighbor, several neighbors. Caroline, who's here, who's an artist, Caroline Popko, with this street in Holliston, and Marion Nobles Brockett, who's an artist, and I asked her, Marion, to illustrate this for me so that Taylor could maybe understand this history some more. So what you see in chapter 1 of Looking East is a short history of the world for Taylor, 2013 version, which is illustrated by Marion Nobles, who has since passed away, but she did a delightful job on this, and with Caroline helping also. And so without Marion, this chapter 1 couldn't be the way it is. And also without the editors of Damiano's Publishing in Framingham, Saxonville, excellent small publishing house for anybody who's running a book and wants to have print on demand. So I want 100 books, I can do books, so I want 25 books, maybe 25 books. And Damiano's publishing company had excellent editors and art editors who helped me bring this document here, that some of you might look at afterwards. And then what is in the book is chapter 1. So I'll proceed along. So now this is where we jump around a little bit. So Carol and I like Carol, here in the second row. Hello. 1975, we bought the old Fisk house on Fifth Street in Holliston, right by Century Manufacturing. And this was a sketch of it done in 1975 or 76 by Carol's step-grandmother. And it really conveys the house that we bought. A little bit cheap. It was, we call it a handyman special. And Carol and I and our kids spent 20 years fixing it up, and then 20 more years fixing it up a second time. And then we lived in the house for 44 years, and then we sold it in about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But this is one of the stories that's here is a story of the Fisk family related to George Fisk, who's here from the Historical Society. And we used to ask each other, are you related to this Fisk here? No, I'm not sure and stuff. And that's true. It's a very distant relationship going back about 6 generations or 7 generations. And I am now charting them. And I haven't finished that project. I've told George that I have the resources to think of the George Fisk family, the Fisk here, the old Fisk homestead in Holliston, and the Fisk farm was at the end of Lowland Street, if you driven into Holliston, which you have where Lowland Street comes into Fisk Street. There used to be an old rundown house there, the Fisk Perry house, which was sort of similar to just this section of that house. That family also was related. These 3 families are related from the Fisks who came out of Watertown after they came over from England. And I'm charting that through history books that I have. And through the next year, I'm hoping to complete that charting and share with the Historical Society, the local historical societies. So this is our oldest son, Seth, father of, this is 1975, just as he learned that his parents were moving down from Marlborough, Mass, and buying this house that was erect. And the greenhouses were wrecked. It was the old Eastern nurseries, some of you were aware of. And Seth is taking a look at the greenhouses there as we were about to move in. He was 4 years older than so this is the second floor of the old section of that house. So this is really interesting to look at. Carol and I for 40 years, and even 45 years, we're trying to figure out the matrix of this house, because you'll see this very old timber construction here. And the main 3-story part of the house, or 2.5-story, is not built that way at all. It's much more clearly early 1800s, 1820s, 1840s. So we couldn't quite understand how this was all working. This you'll learn more about through the talk is the oldest section of the house. And now, after about 50 years of studying it, I actually know pretty much what happened and how it was built. But I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. And it is in a chapter of Looking East, which talks about the Fisk farm, and it gives the details. The other thing I'm doing tonight is I am promoting my book. Anybody want to buy my book? It's available here. $20. Just make a donation here. You don't have to see me. If you get a chance to write your name and which book you bought, that would be great. And where you live or whatever. And remember, Glenn here, and if you buy any one of them for $20, and I just put it in where children supports my own bond writing. So this very old rundown part of the house. This is creosote here. This is a creosote. The chimney was unlined and used by the Gelly family for about 40 years, raising their family there. To raise his family of 9 kids, and they lived a tough life down there. It was the only house down there on this side of the Bogastow Brook. And Fran Gelly, when I speak about history, some of what I share with you tonight, I couldn't share without Fran and Kelly having come over and talk about the old days of Eastern Nursery, which we won't get into here tonight, but Fran Kelly was very instrumental in me learning about the place that Carol and I belong. So this is from a book that I think Joanne Holbert was responsible for putting together back in the late 1990s, I think, which had a pictorial view of Holliston. And this is called the Old Fisk Homestead in Holliston. So if you heard me speak 10 years ago, I would tell you that this was the Old Fisk homestead in Holliston. Used to be out by the brook. We're about 50 yards from the brook, and it burned down in 1940. All wrong, not true, not true. I've learned more even in the last 3 years about the construction of our house. And I'll talk about it later, but I actually think that this house here is probably the wing that you saw. And it's a long story, so I won't go through all of it. It's probably the wing that you saw, because time-wise, it's that type of construction, very primitive mid-1700s construction. And if you look at the configuration of the windows and that, you say, gee, that's our house. Although it's described here as a salt box, it could have been, or it may not have been. It wasn't in the location of our house. It was somewhere within probably 100 yards of our house. I won't go into the details of that now. So history is amazing. Carol and I almost didn't buy it. It was in 1912. There was a big fire in Eastern Nurseries. Eastern Nursery started in 1901 when Jackson Dawson, a noted horticulturalist, and his son started Eastern Nurseries. And 2 years after it started, the son died. But the family continued it on. And 10 years after it started, there was a fire. And the fire burned a house, the Brookside, which was another Fisk house, not the Fisk house I showed you earlier that I said I thought was down by the brook, was another Fisk house. And it burned down all the nursery, all the greenhouses, and destroyed the projects, except for our house. The end of our house, the part that you saw there earlier, was burned and singed, and we've seen some of the singeing from that. But the House and Fire Department saved that house. And this article appears from this happened on June 30th, 1912. And this is from the Holliston Historical Society, and it describes the fire. And it was a miracle that our house did not burn down. And our lives been chasing it burned down. And our lives fine. We're so much enslaved to this house. Pleasant. So I won't go through reading this, but it was a high wind fire. And they rebuilt all the nurseries. A barn down by, if you know that property, was a great barn right down close to the brook. Now had to be built in 1912 or 1913. So many times you see old barns and they're all run down because they're 200 years old. This is just 125 and 150 years old, and it's pretty much a newer construction. And the little cottage that for years we rented out there was also built after the fire. So I share with you that part of our lives was learning about this history. So now this is where I say it's going to be jumpy. Okay, so put on your seatbelts here. We'll see how we do. So surprise history adventure. 130 letters buried in a trunk. So this, some of you heard me when I was speaking in 2018, when this library wasn't open, and the library had me come and speak about self-publishing and about the Hannah Smith book that I had written, and the Remembering Clem book that I had written. So right now, for a few brief minutes, we're going to talk about Hannah Smith, a Medfield girl here, great book, and this Remembering Clem, an American in Iran, 30 years of Christian service, 1948 to 1970, also a good book. I don't recommend this to many people because it's tough. These are both letters books, and letters books are tough. But my message to you is maybe tough, but they are really important because these are history of people who lived and wrote and recorded something and it could have been lost or it could have been saved. So it's not pride, but I do feel like I respectfully saved a chunk of history about Medfield, young girls, predominantly a large family of young girls, in Medfield who were involved with the bonnet industry, and, a gentleman, who lived in Iran for 30 years and retired to continue to help serve in Egypt. So he died in Cairo in 1984 approximately. So it all started when my wife Carol's father died, and we inherited this trunk. Down at the bottom of the trunk, there's this little packet that's tied with a ribbon. And it clearly up and open to that is a beautiful ribbon tied up. And this was he died in 1997, 1998, starting to look into them. And I'll flip here. So I started to learn about the braiding industry that was it was a hot industry here in Eastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Eastern Connecticut, in this period of 1810 to the 1830s. So it was small cottage industry that turned into factories actually later in the 30s and 40s, 1830s and 40s. But this is the type of braid, called Dunstable braid, that Hannah Smith's book is about. It's about a young woman and her sisters who were braiding this rye straw and selling it. And here is this is from my previous talks about Hannah Smith, the Medfield girl. This is a map of Medfield that is in that book. There's quite a detailed map of Medfield in 1816 when she was living as a 18 and 19-year-old young woman before she got married. And this is the genealogy of Hannah Smith, coming from 6 of the Medfield's original 13 families. This is also in that book. So this is historically tying Hannah Smith, one person who nobody knew. Nobody knew. Even in our family, it was one person who had a necklace that, oh, this was from my great-great-great-grandmother Hannah Smith. But for us, it was like, okay, what's that mean? But until we found these letters, until I worked on them, and when I did, I started reading them, digesting them, understanding them. It's a long story that I talked about more 7 years ago. I'm not going to talk about tonight. And I put together a book of Hannah Smith, Medfield girl, with historical background, to help people understand what's going on. Because the letters are by 10-year-olds to 20-year-olds who had education of like 3rd to 4th, 5th grade. That's all you had at that time. So punctuation is odd, capitalization is odd. You'll see one letter coming out where it's quite well scripted by one of the girls in the family. But these were also the singing Smiths of Medfield. They had a Smith singing group, there was a song going on. Were tragedies and very little medical care at that time, quality that we are expecting. So I put together this book. This book was done by ad printed Midway at 109. And I just took my Apple disc down and said, can you turn this into a book that's the size I like, as opposed to 8.5 by 11 pages? And can you put it, I give you the disc and can you do it? And they said, yeah, we can do that. So they did it, and this was one of my first publishing efforts, 2002. And I just said, I had to order like 200 books or something, and I just sort of ate that. I said, through time I'll sell them and talk about them, and it's interesting. So they did, Advent did a great job with my first book. I didn't have to go to a publisher. I could never get these books published by normal publishing houses. Wait a second, I'm sorry, go back. Yeah, see, exact transcription of the words of Smith family. What I pride myself in is I wrote down exactly what these girls, and in some cases boys or men, wrote. No changes. So it was no period, that's the way it came out. So it's a little hard to read, but there is historical background. And those of you who really like history want to see a little bit what the books like then. This book may interest you. And it's a Medfield story. Story of Smith girls that own simple words and spelling. So this is when I spoke 8 years ago, I brought a big placard like these with sample letters. And what's neat about this is, you don't need to read this right now, but interesting. So these are letters, different sort of scripts. I'm gonna show you one close up in a second. But this was neat. Here's something in color. And Carol and I were really excited and colored something in there. Over here, it looks like numbers and stuff. These are sales slips to the local Mr. Fairbanks in the center of Medfield, who's Fairbanks Tavern and Fairbanks Store. He was a local businessman. And Hannah and her sisters would sell this braid to him for salt and pepper or sugar or canister or something. And what's interesting is you'll see for 1,000 yards of straw, that's largest. You can't see it here, but in the book, you'll see some of that. So let me go back here. So Sister Sally writes to Hannah and Deb. Hannah was the older sister, probably 18 or 19 or so. And yeah, that's good, 18. Sally was at home. Sally was a little jealous that Hannah was out in accompanying towns with freedom, living with people and braiding this straw or turning the straw into bonnets. So Sally was someone who wrote fairly neatly. So that's like, okay, you see, dear sister, even if you're far back there. She wrote fairly neatly, but many of the letters were not neat. And so they were hard. And there's a whole story about how I was able to decipher all that. This is it. I just read it. Dear sister, we are all in good health. I have sent the pattern. There are 6 rows on the crown and 7 on the turn, up, set 2 all around, and then slant the rest off. If the braid is fine, you must allow for mine is very coarse. You can make the crown as high as this strip, and then cut out the neck or step on the rows. Isaac Chenery stayed with Martha, probably a cousin of Martha Smith. That's Walter speaking, because I did a lot of study about who these people were. Last night and tonight, he and Benjamin Joy Boyd are up there, and I have to go, so I must be in a hurry. You must sure, see the spelling, and come up soon. Yours, Sally Smith. So these are like, this is a really neat letter because it's pretty easy. You sort of understand it. Some of them are a little more vague, but I again understand the personalities of the different sisters. Some have really funny sense of humor, some more serious, some has the death of a sister. Very sad. But this letter, there are about 198 letters in this book and about 28 poems and accountings of the sale of braid. So those are all in my book with some pictures of the letters, but primarily the transcriptions. So someone can read. Actually, it's a very important book because although Louisa May Alcott introduced us to young women in the Civil War and post-Civil War era, this is 40 years earlier. And this is farm families in New England, right here, Sherburne, Medfield, Holliston area. What these girls lived like, we don't know that much about it, because often you'll get letters from the aristocracy, because they are the ones who have the time to write. But these letters were written in the family. Hannah Smith, here's the sad part, age 32, died in childbirth. The son died also. And then the letters were saved to the family. But she died, and fortunately for us, for me and for Carol, one daughter, Carol's forebear, lived and carried these letters down through her families. And a son lived also, so 2 children lived. But the family that carried long and carried the letters until Carol and I got them was Hannah's daughter, Mary Robbins Draper Davis. You know, okay, so this is very quick, and this is going to happen to me everywhere. Run out of time. We're going to do it anyway. So I wanted to, and some of you saw this before. This is the travels of these letters, which is fascinating. We could figure out how the letters got from Hannah Smith and her sister, and her probably her husband at first, but then her daughter went to her daughter, Mary Robbins Draper, how they traveled around. And I'm going to just do a quick scoop through this. So they started. This is just art and history is like mirror. It's like things happen and it's just unbelievable surprises and good fortune that comes your way to allow this to happen, that this history could be written. So they started Medfield. And then Hannah married a guy from Dedham, Draper was his name, and he worked cattle in Dedham, and then he went into Boston and he started to take cattle in trade down the Caribbean in the 30s and 40s, and he became a successful merchant in Boston. And then they were in Brighton, and then a daughter went up to Arlington, and then she married someone down in New York City who was involved with trade, and then in retirement, she ended up in Wilton, New Hampshire. These letters have to be following this pattern. And then down to Orange, New Jersey, where Carol's great-grandfather came in from the west of all things and married a woman from the east. And he ended up working in publishing in New York City. And then up to after he died, his wife in Hartford. And then the letters went to her son down in New York City again and out to Cold Spring Harbor on Long Island, where Carol's grandfather lived before he moved up to Boston, Cambridge area, where he worked at Harvard University. And when he died, he gave them to his son, Carol's dad, down in Farmington, Connecticut. And he, in his later years, moved to South Glastonbury. When he died in 1997, that trunk, bingo there, came to Holliston, 7 miles from Medfield. How is that possible? It's not possible. So I say miracle time, good luck, good fortune, whatever. Well, it's a miraculous story. If Carol and I lived in Southern California or in New Mexico, that book there would not be written, not possible, because I went to the Historical Society in Medfield, and Rob Gregg was here with his wife Jenny. Rob was very helpful in embracing me in my project and saying, well, this Historical Society, Richard Disorder, his name some of you may know, has done a lot of history work with Medfield. He's the historian of Medfield. And so things fell together very nicely, and that these letters came back this way. I'll go just very quickly here. This is what I just told you, except in a way that, whoops, what you can see just quickly. These are basically the places. It showed pretty well on the screen. Jeff, the screen works well. That picture I just showed before was hard for people to understand when I showed it in Holliston, but you just see all these places, great-great-great-granddaughter, 8 miles from the start, 1998, miracles do happen. That's my message, miracles do happen. Enjoy them when they happen. Okay, so let's see what's next. So this, okay, change gears. Okay, first grandchild, 2000, Taylor was born, and you've heard me mention Taylor before, because it's a short history book. Taylor, sorry for talking. First grandchild can have an impact, history in the making. Here's Taylor at probably age 2 or so, out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where one of our sons lives. Nathan lives out there, for those of you who know the family. And we took her up the tramway to do a spring hike or June hike up in the Tetons there. And that's Taylor, who's had big impact on our lives, being the first grandchild, but then just growing up, and now she's graduated from college. She's third year medical student out in Worcester, Mass. Chance Center. So Taylor's no longer what?
She's engaged.
Oh, what's the script? She's engaged. Oh, but it comes out later. That's part of the term. Okay, Taylor. She. I don't know how it is that I come to these things, but I just decided I want to write some history for Taylor. I was interested in the Taiwanese American, Euro-American marriage, cultural joining there, and how that would impact the grandchild coming from these two places. And so I mentioned you can read it, right? Taiwanese and Euro-American. Very short history for third grade granddaughter. First, no pictures except this picture in the front. Later, 2013, illustrated. And then chapter 1 in Looking East. Looking East is a real mix of writings, and I like them all, but one of my favorites is certainly A Short History of the World for Taylor. Read it carefully, you'll learn something about history, you'll learn something about Walter and just how he looks at what's brought us out of Africa to this whole world we all live in now, that is constantly evolving. What is interesting about the front cover of this, what's interesting about short history of the world for tailors? Does anyone want to tell me what's interesting about that? So this is just an Atlas picture. What do we notice about this? And I had to choose a picture of the world. And okay, so the Pacific view, often you see the Atlantic and Africa. But this is a conscious effort on my part for Taylor, because she's of Taiwanese extraction. What's happening here is Taiwan is there, the United States is here, Europe is over here, Africa is here. In the book, we have arrows showing how man migrated out of Africa and went around here. But I purposely picked this view so we can relate Euro-America and Taiwan in Taylor's life. That's important. So I start to write. This is in 2000 and 2008 and 2000. I started to write short histories, 15 years and 25 commentaries on a great variety of topics. And that's an understatement. It's a very eclectic group of writings. And some people say, oh, what's he saying? It's got all this different stuff in it. Each of the writings has something interesting in them. Some are just little nuggets. Some are just in a sentence. But if you read them, you will learn, and this is what my book is about. It sounds odd, but it's about what was in Walter's head from around 2000 to 2023, 2024. And it's interesting because everybody's head is interesting, but and it's not everything that's in my head, obviously, is a very select thing, but things that I decided to write in them. And it's very eclectic mix. But I think it's certainly important for me personally, for my family, but I felt that it's important for some neighbors and friends, and maybe some people I don't even know. And so I'm testing the waters of trying to get the book out a little bit, mostly with historical societies and libraries, and it's been fun. Some fun things have happened as a result. So now this is another change, okay? Around this time that I was writing, my father died in 2007, and I inherited a McClennen family Bible. A Bible from my great-great-great-grandfather in Boston, 1816. He was a dock worker, ship rigger. He started a company about 20 years before 1816, and had a successful ship rigging company, small companies rather than make out. He was an immigrant from Scotland, and he worked with his hands. A laborer, he built a successful McClennen and another name, rigging industry, and his son carried it on. In 1816, he had 10 of his 12 children. And they decided, he and his wife Sally decided to get a Bible. So they bought this Bible here, it's called Self-Interpreting Bible. And you buy the Bible then somewhat to read, but also to record family genealogy. Many of you may have seen my family Bibles. And the genealogy goes through like one generation, it just stops, or it's not even entered. And then the Bible goes to the bookshelf, because often it was a wedding present. At any rate, this Bible, I don't know how much it was read. It's not that we're a deeply religious family, definitely not. I'm not a churchgoer. I've been at times in my life, not particularly, but this Bible has impacted my life a lot. And some of my talking today is about books, because the Bible is a written narrative, for what it's worth, of the Jewish civilization and of the Christian evolving out of that. And it's somewhat of an ignored document now in general educational circles. But for me, it's become very interesting, because when COVID came, what are we going to do? Well, I tried to read the Bible in 2008 and I failed. And with COVID, I read the Bible and I had some guidance as to how to read it. This Bible is particularly interesting because it's called a self-interpreting Bible. And so you get, sorry. Okay, wrong Bible. So you get not just and God created heaven and the earth and the text, but you get an introduction by the Reverend John Brown of Scotland in the 1780s. He was a very important biblical scholar, never went to school, self-educated, spoke 5 or 7 languages. And all this, at the end of, you get an introduction, you get the text, and then you get a reflections. So I had my own minister, because to read the Bible, you say you read the Bible, it is, but with this John Brown self-interpreter, I could read the Bible myself during COVID, and I did it every morning after breakfast. I would read chapters. So, and then he has all this stuff down the bottom, footnotes, and I have not read that. This man, how he did this, I have no idea. So, the Bible became central to my work. One, I read it, enjoyed it, and I learned a lot. And I felt it's a narrative of, it's one type of history, very different. And people say, well, that's religion. But it is both a faith document, but also there's a lot of historical stuff in it. It's important for Western civilization, and certainly for me and my thinking. And here's a gentleman who's the cousin of Carol's dad. And he's the basis of the book, Remembering Clem, Good American in Iran. I ended up getting 605 letters from his two sisters. He wrote letters home from Iran. And first I got a batch of 105 letters because of the Hannah Smith book. They said, well, maybe we want to do Clem's letters. I said, sure, we'll get 105 letters. The other sister sent me 500 letters 2 years later. Well, that was hard. What do I do? Well, actually, I did read all the letters. And it wasn't COVID, but I did read all the letters. I don't know how I did. But I got into it, and I decided to select about 350 of the letters to put into a book. And I learned that, and I spoke about this book 7 years ago at the Sherman Library. I put these letters, transcriptions, exactly as Clem, pretty much exactly as he had written them. I hesitate a little bit because I selected letters. With Hannah Smith, I didn't select that. It hit all the letters. Here I had to select, and I selected out family letters, ones that are more primarily family, and did the ones more about he was a missionary of Presbyterian Mission Service in Iran, and wrote home to his two sisters. He never married. In 1941, World War II, Pearl Harbor was attacked, and Clem, let's see if that's here. Clem went for training in Spartanburg, South Carolina, or North Carolina, and fell off a train when he was going in on leave one night in probably going into the bar. So the soldiers at night all go in. He fell off a train, and his right arm was severed. He had been drafted, and he wanted to go and serve the United States Army. He had been a teacher before. He had sort of thought of going into international relations. Had a little trouble finding his direction. He was drafted. He said, "I'll go and fight for my country." Fell off the train, severed his arm, asked to stay in the military. They would not let him, and he ended up finding a way through through training for missionary service. He wasn't a man of the cloth. He was an educator and health worker in Iran for 30 years. And he wrote home just very sincere letters about what he saw. And since Iran is a country in play very much at this time, this is an interesting book because you see just one man saying what he saw when he was in Tehran and I'm not going to read this. Basically, his letters were about his work at the missionary service, and there's some sample letters like this interspersed with it. But primarily, it's transcription by me of all his letters. Some were written, some were typed because he only had one hand, so he typed many of his letters on a typewriter because he lost the right hand, right the left hand. But he typed his letters, which made it easier for me to transcribe than Hannah Smith's letters. This is just very quickly, I'll do, he was, he worked in Tehran. He, went up to Mashhad, which is over near Afghanistan. There was a tremendous, terrible earthquake in 1962 in Tehran. 11,000 people died. That was in Ismatabad. And at that time, the Presbyterian service said, Clint, we need you over there to work on reconstruction, village reconstruction. And the international world at that time pumped a lot of money in through churches and through states to help Iran, and Clint was involved with rebuilding a town there. That had both its ups and its downs. It was excellent work. It was very demanding, but in ways similar to Peace Corps work, Carol and I were in Peace Corps, so sort of related in working abroad, trying to understand the other culture and make a contribution. So Clem worked his 30 years there, and he wrote his letters home. He said, "Save these letters, please." And his sisters did save the letters. And then because I had the Hannah Smith book, they said, "Do you want the letters, Walter?" And I said, "Yes." So I spent about, was from 2006, 2008 to 2017 when I published Remembering Clem, a good American. That's not, that title was not taken lightly. He was a good American. He was, to speak of heart of gold people. There aren't many of them around, but he was a heart of gold person. And he had this personal tragedy, but made something of his life anyway. And so that brings me quickly to Paulo Coelho's statement here, which I carry whenever I speak, which is no matter what he does, every person on earth plays a central role in the history of the world. And normally he doesn't even know it's true. Each of you in this room plays a central role in the history of the world. And we don't know, but we do. We're all important. Clem, who had a tragic life, loss of his arm, and made something of himself, and was a dear brother to his two sisters. Didn't get back to the States that often, but did some. And when he retired in 1978, he said, "I'm not going back to America. I'm going to go to Cairo because the Presbyterian mission there needs volunteer teachers to work with some African immigrants coming into Cairo." And he taught English there for 5 years and then died of a heart attack in January '84. Dear man, I only met him twice, but he, and I didn't understand. I mean, I hadn't seen his letters. He was just Clem. Some people say, "Oh, is he CIA maybe? Maybe he's in the CIA." He wasn't, I know that, because I've read every one of his letters. I can tell what was at play there. But he was the opposite of the CIA because he was just good. This is Clem on the left, holding a book, Islam in Transition, that his siblings, the two sisters, write, and brother-in-law just to his right. And it's an interesting book, Islam in Transition, a very progressive book from about 1970 or so, that has writings of all range of Islamic thought, very radical thought, including like the Ayatollah and stuff like that. And the siblings gave it to him because they knew he would enjoy reading it. It is a good read. So Remembering Clem was self-published in 1917, and I shared 7 years ago that this was done by Amazon. CreateSpace platform, which was excellent for me at that time. I didn't have to go to a publisher. I worked through them. I had a good friend and neighbor who did the techie side of it, but I did the writing, and she worked with me to get this out on Amazon. And this book is still available. You can go on Amazon now and get this book. You can get it from me, $20 in a little glass jar over there, if you're interested in it. It is a heavy read, but if you're sort of interested in a very individual story, and words from the heart. And in my letters books, I always give background to try to bring you in to understand what's going on. So here's Looking East, which is my current book, which I'm most promoting. It's a totally different book. And to show how different it is, wow, this is shocking. Here's chapter 9. This is the birds, I say. On the science side, I'm not a scientist, I'm more a history guy. My kids, my wife, I'm more on the science side of things. But one of the chapters in Looking East is in 2016 and 2017. For 55 days, not in succession, but for 7 months, from October until April, I went, we have a house that we built there in 2004, 2005, and the house is right there. because of my grandfather buying land there many years ago, 2000, in 1903. And so we have a Cape connection, as many of you know. And I went to these 4 places that are marked here, here, and then the creek in behind here. Every day that the weather was pretty good and I was down there, and I just noted the winter birds. The Cape people focus a lot on the summer birds, but I focus on winter birds, which is the duck population. And I recorded all the birds I saw. I won't go into details of them, but it is a chapter, one of the longer chapters in this book, and the one that will put most people to sleep. Most people won't read this. But I'll actually sort of hand this around. This is just a sample. You can pass this around here. This is one of the chapters there. And this is how I did that. And it's a marker of 8 years ago. I think in 2 years I may do it again. It's quite interesting. But I'm not going to go into detail on it. So this is about Fisk Farm. And since we were living in this house, I did a lot of study. We collected sheets of paper and put them in manila folders and stuff for years. And then in the last 6 years at the house, I thought, I can break this down, what I've learned. And so that's chapter 3 in my book is about the Fisk Farm. And it just goes into details of Eastern Nursery. Well, the early Fisks were cattle farmers, and then Eastern Nurseries, and then the transition to a suburb in the later years. 40 years of collecting and listening. And so chapter 3 in my book, Looking East, gives closure to that. Now, George Fisk is gonna appreciate this. This is the Fisk genealogy that he found somewhere. I don't know if it was a used bookstore or letter and the whole thing. I won't go into the details there, but the books are really important in history. I know quite a bit about the Fisk family and how they relate to Fisk Street, Fisk Store, to George Fisk, to the Fisk Perry House, and to our house. And I know quite a bit about that, but I could not have studied them without this genealogy of the Fisk family. You'll notice it says Fisk with E and then Fisk without E. And our Fisk farm did not have the E on it. Now it goes for collection, it's a scoop there. Some Fisk did one way, some the other. They tend to predominate with the E. But this book, you can see all the little chits of paper there, those little pages holding parts of the puzzle together, how the Fisks from our house came down, and then where George Fisk's guys were. And then most recently, through miracles I don't need to go into, I learned about the Fisk Perry House, which is also which was at the end of Lowland Street, which was also connected from 7 generations back to our Fisk. I say our Fisk, I'm not a Fisk. So this seems like a misplaced thing, but when I started to read the Bible, I got interested in Jewish history. And if you ever have interest in Jewish history, this is available in the Holliston Library. The story of the Jews. It doesn't say the history of the Jews, it's the story of the Jews. It's been on public TV, so some of you may have seen it. Is anybody here aware of this? Seen it on NPR and public TV? GBH did. He's a professor at Columbia and also has affiliation in London. And he tells stories of the Jewish people going back to Elephantine Island in the Nile River, 1000 BC, where they found a little curled up scrolls and things about who married who and who bought sugar for who. And it's so dry there, these things were safe and they were found. And for me, with Jewish history, it's, I think more of the Holocaust, I think of prejudice against Jews. I think of Portugal and Spain and the bad things that happened there in the 1500s, 1400s. But an everything concept of the whole narrative of the Jewish people. And Simon Schama does that. And it's their stories. It's not for everybody, but it's a rather incredible book. This is book 1. This volume 2 goes from 1492 to about 1900, which is called Belonging, where the Jewish people found inroads to get back into society and be very beneficial for people, and yet also to be constantly cut down, both things happening. And I highly recommend this book. I think Simon Sharma is doing volume 3 now, which will go from 1890 or so up to the present. I'm sure he's doing that, and I keep checking every once in a while. But I think it's happening, but I don't know for sure. it's a great book. I say Enter the Broken Times because for me, from 2015 to 2024, it's just tough times of political fracture and COVID and social stress. Feel it constantly. So this gentleman on the left is my grandfather, Edward F. McClennen. He was a good lawyer in Boston. This is Louis D. Brandeis, the first Jewish member of the Supreme Court, justice in the Supreme Court. They were good friends. Brandeis graduated from Harvard Law School, top of his class, 15 years before my grandfather. When my grandfather graduated from Harvard Law School at age 21, he never went to college, went straight to law school. Brandeis said, I want McClennen in my firm. Now, Brandeis in 2016 became Supreme Court Justice, and my grandfather became a partner in McClennen and Fish, and they remained friends for 20 years thereafter until Brandeis died. But this gentleman is important to me because he bought the property on the Cape where we go, which is a great pleasure to be in my 20 cousins and many McClennans. And so it relates to the Cape and property and sailing at the Cape. I'm a sailor, like the shore. But I never knew anything about him as a person, except for his 7 children, 20 grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was feeling that I'm studying letters and history somewhere, see if I can find out something about my grandfather. And during the COVID time, I did that. But I want to say Brandeis in 1916 was nominated to the Supreme Court. At that time, the nominee did not go down to Washington to be interviewed. Brandeis stayed here in Boston. That's the way it worked. But Edward F. McClennen, his partner in the law firm, was down in Washington as the point person to answer all the questions, bringing the witnesses who were talking about Brandeis. It was controversial. Some for him being Jewish, some for him being just very, very social active. He was social active court justice. And my grandfather was the point man for his nomination, and he got the nomination. It wasn't easy. It was one of the longest processes, about 5 months long. I'll tell you a personal story. Okay, not everybody gets a story. Listen to this. At this time, I was laughing. At this time, my grandfather was down in Washington D.C. My grandmother was up in Cambridge, Mass, with her 7 children. In March, the hearings were getting tough. She went down. This is a true story. She went down to Washington D.C. to see her husband. Okay, she had 5 children. Fine. She saw her husband for a week or 2. Came back. 9 months later, my father was born. Sir, who had great mental deficiencies, unfortunately. But she had child 6 and 7, and my father told me this is and it's just an interesting sort of that history doesn't get told right now, but it's history. So if Brandeis hadn't been nominated to the Supreme Court, that would be it's just like it's all so Brandeis is someone who's very interesting to me and made great contributions to our country. And Edward F. McClennen, the reason he's interested, I said, I'm going to do 3 books and then 5 other things. This is what I put together on my grandfather, Edward F. McClennen. A lot of documents, and it's not legal court cases. It's things that I found, some of them on the internet now, related to how people get nominated, the process for nominations to the Supreme Court, and some of them old, some little letter to his oldest grandson where he wants the map sent that grandfather McClennen got for him. Very personal things, some few love letters in it to my grandmother, and so I now I know my grandfather Edward F. McClennen. I never knew before. Before he was more of this iconic figure in the family, and stories were told about. There's a difference between stories which have some fact basis, and then stuff. Everything in that booklet there is written documents. So let's see.
Well,
Yeah.
who nominated Brandeis? Yeah.
Who gets Wilson, Woodrow Wilson. They were quite close, Wilson and Brandeis. And it's interesting because Wilson had his fair amount of prejudice himself, as we know that. But he recognized it, and Brandeis had a lot of conversations with Wilson about the state of Israel. Early advocacy for the state of Israel, which is another story, but I'm not gonna go there. So these are the collected documents of Edward F. McClennen. I've shared these. This is the only copy of this. So I give these to my siblings and close cousins who are interested. And it's, we now know about him. Actually, these are the 12 children of, William McClennen, who came here from Scotland around, 1770 to 1773, probably. We don't know exactly. But he started this, as I said, this Bible. My grandfather, Edward F. McClennen, kept it up a little bit. My father, Alan McClennen, did more, keeping it up until 2000. And then during COVID and after COVID, I took the time to get all the 64 great grandchildren of Edward F. McClennen. That's my grandfather, who saw a picture of Brandeis. So this Bible has been kept up for 7 generations due to 4 or 5 McClennans. It's difficult, no more will be done on it because it gets it's too expensive. And this doesn't include all the McClennans, because some branches of those 12 children disappeared off the side. We were fortunate to get that Bible and to have it go to my father. I have to just see how I'm gonna do with time here. See where I am here. Think we're getting close. So this is a funny story. Yeah. So, but it's worth telling. So I was given from 6:30 to 8, is that right? Well, my wife would go over. This, I have to tell the story. So when I was a senior in high school, this guy covered a class in a history class when the t-shirt was up on the week. And he was just covering the class. And he had this sentence that said, I've got truth of the existence of God, and I'm going to share it with you. And this was Paul, 6'4", strident guy, Richard Flanagan. And but he's like, get in, Rach. Can't do that. Proof of God. That's what we were. We were smart out of kids. This is Richard Flanagan. And what happened was that sentence always stuck with me for a very personal reason. But I'm sort of a believer in God, but only recently. You talk about the gods or whatever reason, partly from my Bible reading. And he never gave the proof because he left after a week and he never gave it to us. So like, we were really excited. And it never left my head. So during COVID or a little after COVID, I hunted this guy down, 90 years old, in Waterville, Maine. And I called him and I thought, hey, he's an old. Because he was lucid and joyful. Couldn't remember the sentence that I shared, and I shared with 5 classmates this story that he said, now, we remember Flanagan, but we don't remember that story. And he said, I'll probably try to keep the guy in the way, safely keep you going. So I ended up going up and visiting with Carol a couple of years ago when we were visiting Montana and went up to Waterville. Delightful guy. And he's somewhat responsible for my book in a certain way because I'm a man of faith. I don't go to church without a man. It's a fact. And Richard Flanagan, in a very interesting way, played a role in it because he said that in high school and I never forgot it. It's a bizarre statement, One, you say, why would a teacher ever say that? He was just covering a class for the department. And he's a bright guy, and we were pretty excited. He never gave his proof. But in my book, I write Mr. Flanagan's proof. The proof is Walter, 60 years late. Turned to God in his own way. So I called Mr. Flanagan's proof. He never spoke to me ever since then until I called him. So it's a joke title, but it's pretty cool. Pretty cool story. So you saw this picture before, but when we moved to Mudville, we sold our house on Fifth Street 6 years ago and moved to Mudville. And the Housing Historical Society, Joanne Fulbert, who's here, was great. She introduced me to the Birch Files, which were just a real scratchbook. And here I found a picture that you've seen before and some details, which I'm not going to go into, but the details here talk about how in around 1840, the old Fisk house, this one here, was replaced by the new one, which was our house, the three-story part. It doesn't say it here, but it seems to me that what happened was they dismantled the old house, which was maybe 100 feet behind the current Fisk house, which Carol and I restored, and took that old part and built that wing, because the structure looks like that. I don't know if that's a fact, but I believe it's probably what happened. The reason I share the story is that historical societies are important, and two little lost treasures come back. The Birch family decided to turn this over to the Historical Society. So there's some facts about the Fisk family in our house that I didn't know for the first 40 years of living in this house. These are the contents of my book, and it's just a real scattering. Over at the right, we have some poetry, which is sort of fun. Some is serious, some is sad, some is, I think, quite nice. I'm not a poet, but I have fun with poetry. To encourage brave readers, if you think you might, I think some of you might enjoy this book. These are some of the topics. One is about Egyptian immigrants that had an impact. Phoebe Yassa, some of you know Phoebe Yassa, she's a Sherburne resident who died some years ago. Egyptian teacher of Egyptian immigrants when I first started working in Framingham with the immigrant population. She taught the Arabic side of the instruction as we were teaching English second language. Phoebe later taught our son piano, and later when I wrote the McClennen book, this is I met a woman who lives in Egypt, who was a Presbyterian missionary servant, who got married because she lived in Natick, and she married an Egyptian, and Phoebe Yassa facilitated the marriage because the parents of this woman, Native, were a little worried. Their daughter married in Sparta. And so my point is this: Phoebe Yassa, I knew through the years, it's finally related to the Clem. So there is a brief story about Phoebe Yassa in here. She's a great person, rest in peace, very important person in our family. I gotta go back. So of God and faith, I've talked about that a little bit. I've read the Bible because of inheriting the Bible and because of COVID. And I'm in my second time through it now, reading a little different ways. Am I descended from American Indians in colonial Maine? My great-great-grandmother says yes. My great-great-great-grandmother says yes. I don't know if we are or not, but we have something she wrote in the 1930s saying why she felt from talking to her grandmother that indeed there had been marriage with the indigenous population in Maine. Lasting impact of the Vietnam War, my 50th college reunion, we were asked to talk about the impact of the Vietnam War, and my writing is in there, and myself and other classmates just basically opened up ourselves on how that war impacted our lives. My story is in there in my book and in our 50th Union report. Conversing with the clergy of Holliston and Sherburne, and someone who's been a long time, had a long time concerned about the abortion issue in our nation. And so I took the time to speak with all ministers in Holliston and Sherburne, not all ones in Sherburne, but one in Sherburne, and to sort of bounce ideas off of them. And just a little bit about that in the book. Laughter in the time of COVID, the joy returns to Mudville's play on Casey at the Bats poem. So there's some fun in there too. These are the five sidebar writings that I've done. You see the short history of Walter Taylor, Edward F. McClennen, this about American Indian heritage. This here is about William McClennen, the immigrant who came here, who we don't know anything about his parents. He started his Bible, and we don't know anything about his parents. I think he was probably an orphan. He was part of the out-migration from Scotland, probably an orphan or an indentured servant, just before the American Revolution. And at age 10, he was a fighter in the Revolutionary Army. At age 10, fighter. And so we don't even become a fighter at age 10. We know he was born in Scotland. We don't know where or the exact date. But I've done some research on him because of my interest in history. And I have a cousin who spends full time on the computer, and she reaches out and gets these incredible stories. it's scarce history, but I put everything we know, about, 5 months ago, I concluded it and put it in that booklet there, which is fascinating. I've shared that with all my cousins, which has been greatly appreciated. So stirring the pot, here's, this is Walter way out there, don't have many supporters for it, but I put in chapter 17, personal convictions, 2 years ago, I wrote a constitutional amendment, to equal rights, to everybody, 18, 19, 20 years old. I don't want to get into discussion with you, it's a long story, that's going to be anytime other points, but I've been an advocate for lowering the drinking age to 18. Few of my friends agree with me that that's okay, depends is important. And after focusing on alcohol for 10 years, and I go to college campuses, hand out flyers, and I got a bumper sticker, magnets. I used to get about so one-man campaign for lowering the drinking age to 18. Don't hold it against me. But then I thought, well, wait, why not all rights? Why not all rights for 18, 19, and 20 years? And I say that from the bottom of my heart and the depth of my mind, that I think it would be a good thing, and I think in 50 years we'll have it. But I wrote this constitutional amendment, very simple language, say equal rights for everybody, and you'll be interested in reading it. It doesn't give advocacy, it doesn't give like a 10-page dissertation why Walter's right on this, but it is a chapter in my book. Maybe a little poetry can help. This is playing off of Walt Whitman's I Hear America Singing. I'm going to read it to you. I Hear America, this is Walter's play on it. This is during COVID, when everybody was sad, discouraged and everything, and I wrote this. I hear America singing, still buried and vibrant and strong, ever stumbling and confused and divided and united. America is singing, stopping not for war, plague, nor a government fractured. America is building a song. This was happening under our house, building a song in Mudville. Used muscular machinery brings the concrete that pours rich gray mud into the foundation forms. The crew is efficient singing their song, they sing their skill to those who watch. The farmers are there, the framers are there, building framers, come from Brazil, and they're singing in their new land in the sounds of their tropical voices. This was happening during COVID next door to us when Steve O'Leary kept building 4 houses. It was hard to do, and I admired him. And Walt Whitman, whatever you think about his poetry, he admired the vibrancy of America. Even though we're a messy country, crazy things happen, but his vibrancy, I didn't like him much in college when I read it, but I liked him more recently a lot, and so I channeled him and wrote this poem. This is just 2 verses of that poem. This is the William McClennen document. I'm not going to talk more about it. I learned a lot about him in Boston in the early 1800s, and I documented it for our family. This is me in South Harris in the Outer Hebrides when Carol and I went there. This is the miracle. Okay, we went there. I knew nothing about William McClennen, very little about him. My great-great-great-grandfather came from Scotland. And later, through DNA analysis, and through my studies of him and my cousin's work, Carol and I were on this beautiful sand beach, and that is called Tarrantay Island there, uninhabited island off of Scotland. It used to be inhabited. And when my nephew's DNA was checked, there was one connection back to Scotland. And when my cousin, who's online all the time, checked the genealogy of that connection, one person went back in the 1780s to Tarrantay Island that is behind me in this picture. I didn't know the connection at all then, but when my cousin came up with Tarrantay, I said, I think that is, I think it's it. And then I got a photo of just incidentally. Taylor has just gotten engaged, and her fiance learned about my letters presentation, and Taylor came to the Holliston Historical Society presentation, and Taylor's fiance Aiden said, you know, my great aunt was in the Peace Corps in Afghanistan, 1964, and she just 2 months ago, the aunt died about a year and a half ago, put together a book of letters that had been saved from Afghanistan. So this is right up my alley. I don't know the woman, I don't know. She's died. Her sister, Aiden's Granny, is still alive. But I asked them if I could show this at my talk, because here is someone who's done another letters book. I'm a letters book guy. And it's beautifully done. If you have a chance to take a look at it afterwards, please do. Um, it's very different. There's no background information. It's just photos and letters and transcriptions of letters. The transcriptions are important. That transcription is beautifully done. It's by a platform that you can go online and learn about. So this woman put together this. Her name was Helen McGowan Morley, arranged by the niece Laura Smith McKenna, who is the mother of Taylor's fiance. And so you get a picture of a nice book, letters book together, very different from what Walter's done. And you know, someone in this group may end up at some point saying, oh, we got some letters, I can do something. They're all different models. This was graphically beautifully done, but with no background information. So you don't know anything really about the person, but you do, by reading the letters, you learn about her peace-corps experience. So I think wrapping it up, where it all began, history, March 1975, it's Seth again, Taylor's dad. Taylor's dad, right there. And this was the old Fisk house before we put an addition on it. It was an old shed out back. And this is probably the 1840s part of the house. This, I think, is the old Fisk homestead. I may be wrong on that, but this just seems to make sense to me. And I continue to study the record of the Fisk and Hollis. And I told George, give me some more time with that TV house. You book it out. I'm going to put together something for the Historical Society about the Fisk. And so you add to the narrative, do something out of the deep past, recorded facts of shared memories passed down, stories, narratives that help us to understand who we are. It's hard to know who we are. We talk about history, narratives. It's very hard to do history if people don't write things down. It's hard work, but it's, I feel good about the last 25 years of putting stuff down. And even stories of today, I say that because basically, looking at these stories of today, the last 25 years, seems like a misfit for you, but not really. It's really what is it Walter said through those 25 years, very disparate flow of things, no chronology of beautiful flow, but interesting idea. 50 years from now, somebody can say, oh, it's interesting, get some interesting ideas. So that was my poem, nice story. And I'll make a little bit. Question. What? Minutes or any comments or, yes.
I would just like to mention the merch acquisition that you received. The merch acquisition that is received by Dolls. Because Sherburne has 4 volumes by the same.
Yeah. Really? This is a scrapbook.
It's a scrapbook.
Yeah, right. And was pretty rough shape, but it's good to know Sherburne has them too, because there's a wealth of information there.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, and for me, it impacted what I know. I thought I knew about our house, and I learned history is very humbling, because I said things about our house 10 years ago. Oh, no, that wasn't true. And some of the things I say now about this house there, probably not true, but it's better than it was 10 years ago. But that's great to know. And
Right, and we actually did not know who the author was. So I recognized the Devonshire writer. We hired somebody.
Yeah.
And do comparisons.
Oh,
of
that's
lots of
it.
different memberships and determine who the
Yeah.
author is.
yeah, but John Palmer can tell you a lot more, not this evening, but at some point about the Birch Files of Allison. I only know that it helped me in an inordinate way when I told you I was trying to get a little bit more information, and it was gold mine.
They said, oh, I can.
Yeah.
I get something.
Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Well, it is a question, I guess. The first grandchild got a book.
Yeah.
Do you write a letter to all of the grandchildren, each of the grandchildren weekly? So that when they get around to, okay.
No, I can't do it. I can't for sure. Each grandchildren is 10 grandchildren, they're each different, even Taylor, I have to tell you, she was rather nonplussed as a third grader, as you might imagine. And as an eighth grader, it was a little better because she could maybe grasp a little in her father and her uncles. So this is sort of the, who's got pictures now, and so she might have been encouraged. But I have to say that, even, she doesn't fully relate, she relates to it, and she knows, she came to the history talk in Holliston, 2 months ago because of it. And so she knows my history work, but she's a busy lady with medical, training and everything. And I really think she'll probably appreciate that, well, that particular document most when she's 50 or 60, because it's, if you read the first chapter, you buy my book and read the first chapter, there's a lot of heart in it and a lot of care to make sure I'm not saying some things that are like really off historically. It's very cursive history, but the time I wrote it was some archaeological work showing how Taiwanese flow of people went all the way down the Chinese coast, out into Polynesia, and all the way up through the archipelagos going up to Hawaii. They could tell that from crockery remains. So it's not saying that Taiwan discovered all these islands, but it is saying to Taylor that the Taiwanese flow of population there's a lot there. We don't even know about, but we do know, because of the fragments that were left, that that cultural group played a role in populating Pacific Island. And so that's only a couple sentences there, and she would be able to appreciate it later. But I was trying to both validate Western civilization and a bit of Taiwanese. Other questions or comments? Yes, Elaine.
All right, you make me feel a little bit guilty. No, because I was sitting at home, I mean, I was bequeathed, so to speak, or dumped upon, a large number of letters. Family, yes, a few of them going back to like the 1880s. Also about 30 years of my mother and her siblings, where they call it the round robin. And for about 30 years, rotated through each of the siblings, and they would add their letters on. Now, what would you advise I do with that, Walter?
These books were very hard to, I need to write them. Sometimes a lot of time. I have to admit that there's some letters that Carol and I should discard these letters. It's hard for me to do, but sometimes, no. But sometimes they're just very special things, to say. Sometimes we get part before we can even make a choice, but it is important to know that sometimes these letters hold some information that's very, very important. I really think this Gilbro letters. No historians have grabbed on to that yet. But there's very rich, and I told a little bit about Shepard, I probed through writers and through university a little bit, and likewise with McClennen, well, nobody goes grabbed onto that. So, talk about that. The Midfield letters, I think, are really very important because it's young girls, 1810 to 1825, and they're talking. And it's not really depth, but historians go into that and actually work with it. Until it was in a book, they couldn't do that because they were just down in a trunk. So you have to use judgment. But some letters, as they say, and there are people who do letters. When I did these letters, the band number of other letters, the historians have done, so I learned different stories about letters. They found in kitchen ceilings when they redo ceilings. Unbelievable, you fall down a batch of letters. In that case, it was a black, white couple from Western Massachusetts who fell in love. And Irish worker and a black really good worker, and somebody about 25 years ago was storing the kitchen and fell down. Incredible, beautiful story.
Across the color.
What?
What's it called, across the color line?
Cross the color line, yeah. It's in the, yeah, so it's good. Any other questions, sir? I really thank you for listening. Pleasure to and Brad. important for me and the work for libraries and historical societies, keep just, modestly, just put on and stuff, good. If any of you do want a book, just about $20 there for any of the books. If you want 3 books, dude. Just, joking aside, I don't, just, put money there in books. Oh, these books are all, I think, a library, I know Sherman Library, and Alice Library, so that's another move. Also, this, still, my most recent book, and he's not saved. But these books are available in the library, however, I, unless the school, find a chance to read them. And, this here. Yeah, this was, somebody, like. Yeah, sorry, I'm so excited. I really could penny and they were.
Thank you all for joining us.
Look.
Have a good night.
Oh, yeah. Down to the, down.